Discovery class, good morning. We're into the month of June. One of the things we do in our Discovery class, we make a fuss over people, because I've made a living out of enjoying people. And one of the things we have done, if somebody has a birthday or an anniversary, we begin by singing happy anniversary to them or happy birthday and Frida plays, and we enjoy ourselves and we just have a real hootenanny. Here are the ones this month who've had a birthday. I'm going to read their names, I'm going to give you their dates, and then I want you, if you can, give them a phone call or maybe give them a card. On the 3rd, Mary Ann Kundert. On the 7th, Art Hansen. On the 21st, Ruth Olhauser. On the 21st, Mary Ann McEachran. On the 26th, Tim Shen. On the 29th, Sophie Patterson. She's 100. She's going to turn 101. On the 30th, Grace Lee. Now, we did have a lot of anniversaries. These are couples that got married in the month of June. Stan and Mary Ann Kundert on the 4th. Ron and Mary Kernahan on the 13th. Ed and Alice Jansen on the 15th. The 20th was Ed and Joyce Elford, or Wayne and Joyce Elford. The 20th was Todd and Marilyn Stiles. 28th, Wally and Frida Canvasser. And also on the 28th, Art and Loretta Hansen. Now, if you can give them a card or give them a phone call, I know they would appreciate that. Now, education, that's what we're going to talk about today. One of the things that I did in my ministry, I like to not only make house calls where people live, but I like to get on to the job where our men and women worked. We have a cemetery right in the center of town in Calgary. It's called Queen's Park. Right across the street is one of the largest high schools in our city. In our class, I have a retired school principal. In that high school is where he had one of his last charges. They had 100 teachers, front-end staff of a dozen, and it was an amazing place. And every once in a while, I would just drop in to visit my ladies or my men to see what they're doing on the job. I didn't phone, I just showed up. Sometimes it cost me. I remember going into a great big factory one time, and 2 brothers in our church owned that factory. They had 250 workers. And when I went in the front door, they would yell, "Kernahan's here, take the calendars down." Well, that became our joke. Today, we're going to talk about education. And that teacher across the street from Queen's Park is here with me. He's in our class. He was a great teacher. He not only liked students, but he had a heart of gold. And the students that listen to him are still writing him letters. You ought to read them. These people are very successful. They've now risen in their job, and they're coming back and they're saying thanks to their teacher for starting me out on the journey. Alvin F. is with me this morning. I'm going to step aside. He's going to give you a lesson on education. Sit back and enjoy yourself. Pour yourself another coffee and get comfortable. Alvin?
Greetings, and welcome to another Discovery Bible class. When Pastor Ron suggested I do a session on teaching and learning, my first thought was that since literally volumes have been already written on this, who possibly would be interested in hearing more about this topic? But after some thought, I decided to reflect on some of my own personal experiences as a teacher administrator, and to also include some experiences as recorded by other people. Let me begin by turning to the book of James and reading from chapter 3, and I'll be reading from the Message Bible. James 3. Don't be in any rush to become a teacher, my friends. Teaching is highly responsible work. Teachers are held to the highest, strictest standards, and none of us is perfectly qualified. We get it wrong nearly every time we open our mouths. If you could find someone whose speech was perfectly true, you'd have a perfect person. in perfect control of life. A bit in the mouth of a horse controls the whole horse. A small rudder on a huge ship in the hands of a skilled captain sets a course in the face of the strongest winds. A word out of your mouth may seem of no account, but it can accomplish nearly anything or destroy it. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony to chaos, throw mud on reputation, and send the whole world up in smoke, and go up in smoke with it. You know, this is scary. You can tame a tiger, but you can't tame a tongue. It's never been done. The tongue runs wild, like a wanton killer. With our tongues, we bless God our Father, and with the same tongues, we curse the very men and women He made in His image. Curses and blessings out of the same mouth? A spring doesn't gush fresh water one day and brackish the next, does it? Apple trees don't bear strawberries, do they? Raspberry bushes don't bear apples, do they? And you're not going to dip into a polluted mud hole and get a cup of clear, cool water, are you? Do you want to be counted wise? To build a reputation for wisdom? Here's what you do. Live well. Live wisely. Live humbly. It's the way you live, not the way you talk, that counts. Mean-spirited ambition isn't wisdom. Boasting that you are wise isn't wisdom. Twisting the truth to make yourself sound wise isn't wisdom. It's the furthest thing from wisdom. It's animal cunning, devilish conniving. Whenever you're trying to look better than others or get the better of others, things fall apart and everyone ends up at the other's throats. Real wisdom, God's wisdom, begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. It's gentle and it's reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings, not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other and treating each other with dignity and honor. In all sincerity, I should end my lesson now, because what more could I possibly add? But to fill in my 30 minutes or so, I want to touch on the following aspects. I want to talk about some of my own personal experiences relative to teaching and learning, to offer some examples of great teachers, talk about some student reactions to directions in learning, some words of wisdom from Andy Rooney and Robert Fulghum, and then to close with the greatest sermon of all time, namely Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, as found in Matthew chapter 5. Sometimes in the past I was asked, why did you become a teacher? I probably still do not have a good answer to that question. To those of you who watch the game of curling on TV, young kids are asked, what do you want to be and become when you are older? They give a litany of different responses, such as, I want to be an engineer. I want to be a firefighter, a geologist, a paleontologist, a world-class curler, and so on. But there's one boy who simply states, I don't know what I want to be. Personally, I can identify with that young boy. In my very first day in school in grade 1, I was suspended from school. Not for a day, not for a week, but for an entire year. Yes, you heard that correctly, for a whole year. So you may ask why. Actually, it was very simple and was really nothing that I did wrong. Even though I was born in Canada, my family spoke no English at home. Thus, when I entered grade 1, I knew no English. On that first day, not understanding what my teacher was saying, I got bored, and she had previously handed out a box of crayons. So I took a black crayon and colored the entire top of my desk black with the crayon. My teacher, Mrs. Pinder, never forget her name, was not impressed and simply felt that I was not ready for school. So she sent me home to learn English to parents who spoke no English. How did she manage to do that? Well, my birthday is in December, so I still was not quite 6 years of age, and that's why she was able to send me home. But you know, in hindsight, that year off probably was more than a blessing. When I returned to school, I knew some English, I excelled in school, and graduated with honors. But teaching still was not my career choice when I went to university. I was much more interested in math and science. I had taken all of my subjects, I thought, 3 maths, biology, chemistry, but unfortunately I had not taken grade 12 physics, and thus was not allowed to enter the science program at university. As a result, a sudden change to BA and a B.Ed program. My first teaching assignment was at Colonel Walker School here in Calgary. Colonel Walker District was close to the BA Shell refinery and had a lot of students who weren't very interested or motivated in schooling. I taught math and science and French to all of the students grades 7 to 9. French was compulsory at that school, and as you can well imagine, I did not necessarily have a lot of eager, motivated students in that class. But my biggest challenge as a first-year teacher did not come from the French class, but from a grade 7 student in my science class, my favorite subject. That class had a mix of very bright students, such as a young girl, aged 10 in grade 7, and others who were 12 and 13 years old and who were struggling with school. One such student was Donna, 13 years old, flaming red hair, tallest in the class. Initially, Donna was more than a thorn in my flesh, but Donna taught me more about teaching and learning than all the time I spent in practicum at the university. No doubt, because Donna was older, taller, with bright red hair, she probably had been bullied a lot in the past, and thus needed some special attention. Fortunately, I eventually realized that under her hard shell, all she simply wanted is to be appreciated, acknowledged, and understood as a person. I quickly learned that subject matter often is less important than establishing and nourishing a learning environment and a healthy self-esteem. So for me, what is this process of teaching and learning? We've all heard about the teachable moment, that special time when a person is most receptive to learning. Well, for me, it is when a teacher, or any person, creates that environment where a person wants to learn through receiving encouragement, guidance, love, and respect, as well as being challenged to become independent, self-sufficient, emotionally secure, physically fit, and spiritually grounded. I'm reminded of an expression my father often used. You can take a horse to the water trough, but you can't make the horse drink. It has to be thirsty. So as a teacher, our task is to make students thirsty for learning. I have a story about a teacher that did not instill this motivation. It's a story about Monty Roberts, as told by Jack Canfield in the book Chicken Soup for the Soul. Monty was the son of an itinerant horse trainer whose high school was continually interrupted because his family moved from town to town. In grade 12, he was asked to write a paper about what he wanted to do and be when he graduated. Monty wrote a 7-page paper describing his goal of someday owning a horse ranch. His paper even included a diagram of his 200-acre ranch, showing the location of all the buildings, the stables, and the racetrack. It also included a detailed floor plan of a 4,000 square foot house. When he got his paper back, his teacher had given him a large red F grade. Why, he asked. She said that he had presented an unrealistic dream for himself. She said, "You have no money, no resources, and you come from an itinerant family. If you rewrite this paper with a more realistic goal, I will reconsider your grade." Several days later, after much thought, Monty turned in the same paper, making no changes at all. He stated, "You can keep your F grade, and I'll keep my dreams." Moving ahead many years later, that same teacher brought 30 students to camp out for a week at Monty's 200-acre ranch with the 4,000 square foot house. On leaving the ranch, the teacher says to Monty, "Look, Monty, I'm sorry. When I was your teacher, I was something of a dream killer. Thank you for your courage and not to give up on your dream." This brings me to my experience with vocational high schools. At one time in Calgary, we had 3 of them: Lord Van Horn, Lord Shaughnessy, and Jack James. I was the AP at Van Horn for 3 years and the principal at Lord Shaughnessy for 7 years, grades 9 to 12. So who came to these schools? Well, students who had previously experienced continuous failure in many different ways. Initially, the incoming grade 9 students were not happy about coming to these schools. They had to be bussed out of their own community and away from their friends. Plus, they already had this unwarranted stigma that it was a school for dummies. Wrong, wrong, wrong. They may have had some learning difficulties, but they were gifted and talented in so many other ways. Actually, being part of the vocational school was a real bonus for them. For now, in addition to the academics, they had access to 15 different shops and trades and professions, such as arts and crafts, music, typing, computers, hairdressing, sewing, commercial cooking, small engine, building construction, building subtrades, automotive, auto body, machine shop, horticulture, and welding shop. Some of these students could, after a few lessons, draw a welding bead just like a professional. And the beauty was that all programs were equally open to boys and girls. And there was a real bonus, a plus, that they received 2 months of on-the-job training with real employers, which often resulted in a job with that firm after they graduated. So what worked? Teachers knew that although subject matter was important, their first and foremost task was to build within each of these students some successful experiences. And the shops were the secret. Students loved them, and they spent half of their day in these shop programs. Academic courses were somewhat watered down so that students could experience success and begin to believe in themselves. It actually took about a year to bring about this transition in attitude. Thus, we usually had a good return of students for grades 10 to 12. One of the most rewarding aspects was graduation day. Parents, especially mothers, literally cried as they saw their daughter or son walk across the stage to graduate. Much of the school's success was a teacher-pupil ratio of 11 to 1, rather than a 21 to 1 as in other high schools. Today, we hear a lot about transformation. Well, my experience at Lord Shaughnessy was an example of real transformation. You know, there's something very special about teaching. Whether you're a professional teacher or just a parent or only a parent or working with others. I can honestly say that my 7 years at Lord Shaughnessy were the most rewarding years of my entire teaching career. Teachers and the right programs made the difference. I also was a teacher and administrator at some of the so-called elite schools, such as Alboya, Dr. Robert Warren, and Dr. E.P. Scarlett High School. But you know, most of those students were more self-motivated and required less mentoring. When I attended University in Edmonton, I had the privilege of attending a session by Buckminster Fuller, an engineer and inventor of the geodesic dome. This was the lightest, strongest, and most effective structure ever designed. He made a statement that I will never forget. He said, "I can tell you everything I know or have learned, and yet in telling you everything, I have lost nothing. I still know it. I have simply shared it with you." Example number 2. This is a story about Elvin Law from Yorkton, Saskatchewan, 20 miles from my hometown of Springside. Elvin now lives in Calgary. In the early 1960s, over 13,000 babies around the world were born with deformities as a result of mothers taking a tiny little pill called thalidomide, a drug prescribed to relieve morning sickness. Elvin was one of them, born without any arms. Facing what the parents thought was a hopeless situation, Elvin's birth family, on the advice of doctors, gave him up for adoption. The parents had hoped and prayed that their sickly, deformed newborn would somehow find a family more capable of caring for his needs. And yes, their prayers were answered in the person of Hilda Law. Hilda was a 55-year-old foster mother who, along with her husband Jack, had taken in neglected and abused children. They loved them and encouraged them, and with the help of social service programs, sent them to couples yearning for adoption. They were truly special people. But the most disturbing case that was ever presented to them was Elvin. They were warned that Elvin would never possess any quality of life and would likely need to be institutionalized. Wrong. Not only did Hilda nurse him back to health, her intuition told her that lurking inside this impossible scenario was hope. Through the law's faith, dedication, and infinite belief, Alvin's life looked promising. His world suddenly opened up when, quite by accident, Alvin learned to use his feet to hold the baby bottle to feed himself. As he progressed in age, Alvin learned to perform most routine activities using his feet alone, including eating, dressing, and grooming himself, later in life driving a car, sewing, and playing sports. He attended regular elementary and high schools, even though at that time handicapped children were usually placed in institutions. He was blessed to have remarkable teachers who recognized his potential, who worked with the Law family, and most importantly, he had parents who did not consider him handicapped. In his book, Alvin complains that he thought his parents were too hard on him because he had to tidy up his room, help with chores, and do normal things. His adoptive parents raised him not just to survive, but to exceed all expectations. Life for Alvin took a turn for the amazing when he discovered his musical ability. He joined the school band, playing the trombone, and the teacher had rigged up a special device so that he could play with his feet, played the drums, and played the piano, all with only his feet. Within a short period of time, he became an award-winning musician, and he also graduated from high school with honors, and then went on to college, and again graduated with honors. So what became of Alvin? After college, he embarked on a successful career in radio broadcasting. Then he became a professional motivational speaker. He has worked with over 7,500 different organizations on 5 different continents and has played a direct role in raising over $225 million for charity. He is married and wrote a book, Alvin's Law of Life: 5 Steps to Successfully Overcome Anything. What's his basic philosophy? He says, you can't hide from life. You're going to have obstacles that show up. There is no magic pill you can swallow. There is just you. It's not what you don't have, it's what you have that counts. It's important to learn what is inside of you, not what you have outside of you. It has been said that difficulties do not determine who you are. Rather, it is difficulties that reveal who you really are. Alvin makes this amazing quote: the best thing that ever happened to me is being born without arms. It brought me circumstances never thought possible. By the way, his story is on YouTube, and it's really worth listening to. There are literally thousands of stories like this. But turning to the lighter side, some quotes from Andy Rooney on learning. A man of few words, but with a lot to say. And here's some examples. I've learned that the best classroom in the world is at the feet of an elderly person. I've learned that when you are in love, it shows. I've learned that a person saying to me, you made my day, makes my day. I've learned that having a child fall asleep in your arms is one of the most peaceful feelings in the world. I've learned that being kind is more important than being right. I've learned that I can always pray for someone when I don't have the strength to help him in some other way. I've learned that sometimes all a person needs is a hand to hold and a heart to understand. I've learned that we should be glad that God doesn't give us everything we ask for. I've learned that money does not buy class. I've learned it is those small daily happenings which make life so spectacular. I've learned that love, not time, heals all wounds. I've learned that everyone you meet deserves a smile. He has many more on the list, but I think you get the message. Another person that I believe has some sound, simple advice is Robert Fulghum, who wrote All I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. He has a whole list of them. I'll just mention a few of them. Play fair. Put things back where you found them. Don't take things that aren't yours. Clean up your own mess. Don't hit people. Say you are sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Be aware of wander. Take a nap every afternoon. Everything we need to know is there. The golden rule and love and basic sanitation, ecology, politics, and sane living. Think what a better world it would be if we all had cookies and milk around 3 o'clock every afternoon and then lay down for a nap. Or if we had a basic policy in our nations to always put things back where we found them and cleaned up after our own messes. Currently, we have another author, Jordan Peterson, who recently wrote a book on the 12 rules for life. I realize I'm running out of time, so I suggest that you watch him on YouTube. I highly recommend that you listen to his half-hour presentation regarding his 12 rules for life. Finally, a lesson from the greatest teacher of all time, namely Jesus, and his Sermon on the Mount as found in Matthew chapter 5, and reading once again from the Message Bible. When Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. And this is what he said: "You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just what you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourself proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of to compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit you. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are uncomfortable. You can be glad it happens. Give a cheer, even. For though you don't like it, I do, and all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be the light, bringing out God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm going to put you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you will prompt people to open up with God, His generous Father in heaven. Pastor Ron always concludes with a story from the sunny side of the street. This one is dedicated to anyone and everyone who ever taught school, parented children, or served in some other learning, teaching capacity. And here's the story. A former sergeant, having served his time with the Marine Corps, took a new job as a school teacher. But just before school started, he injured his back and was required to wear a plaster cast around the upper part of his body. Fortunately, the cast fit under his shirt and was not noticeable. On the first day of school, he found himself assigned to the toughest students in the school. The students, having already heard that their new teacher was a former Marine, were kind of leery of him and decided to see just how tough he was before trying any pranks. The teacher, walking confidently into the rowdy classroom, went to the window, opened the window, and then sat down at his desk. When a strong breeze made his necktie flap up and down, he picked up a stapler and promptly stapled the tie to his chest. There was dead silence. He had no trouble with discipline that year. You know, in retrospect, there were times in my career where I wish I could have used that tactic. Thank you for listening, and have a blessed day.